This video is a bit area canine centric, but it's covering how to get data from your Garmin handheld, particularly the Alphas, to CalTopo, and also vice versa. There's some really good information that you can pass back and forth between the two. And with the Alphas in particular, you can do that via Bluetooth. At the end of this video, I also cover doing it via cable, which would apply to the old 320s, 430s, or the Alphas if for some reason Bluetooth is not working. If this video is useful to you, please consider a donation to NASDA. You can, and this is me. So if you have any questions, feel free to call me. So on your phone, you're going to need two apps to get the Garmin's to run the Alphas: the Garmin Explore app and, of course, the CalTopo app. The Garmin wants to have you download the Alpha app, and I don't recommend that. They stripped a lot of capability out of the Alpha app, so I still am using Explore. Potentially, if they update Alpha over time, that might change. The steps here should still be the same, really. When you get into the app, across the bottom is where you can do different things. They have a map function, which isn't terribly useful. They have a saved function, which is important. This is where all your data is saved to, either under activities at the top or under the all items at the bottom. The next tab is the outdoor maps tab. This is where you can pay Garmin to put maps onto your handheld if you want. And then the last one is devices. If you click on your linked device, if across at the top it shows a little spinning wheel, it is syncing, and that's just important to note. You can also force a sync on this page so that it takes and is getting your data up to date. So just some general information on the Garmin handheld, so you kind of know where to go to get some of this information. So the home screen, it has icons across the bottom. Yours may look different than this because they are easily rearranged to suit everybody's preference. So I'm just kind of showing you the main menu here in Garmin and the different things, but each thing is easily movable so you can personalize this screen. The thing that we're actually interested in is the setup button. And you'll notice under Bluetooth, this is where it's linked to my phone and therefore the Explore app. If you ever need to unlink, you have to unlink there as well and then reinstall it in Explore. So this is just my list of tracks right now on this GPS. And I'm going to show an example of transferring some data. And in this case, it's taking data from CalTopo to your Garmin handheld. In this case, because we're doing it with the Alpha, it's all Bluetooth, no cables required. This is really important for area handlers, in my opinion. In this case, in CalTopo, I have an example area. So as a handler, I may get this assignment in this weird shape, whatever this may be, and I want that to show on my handheld. So Garmin, under the folders icon at the top, you can select export. Always make sure and select GPX under format, or you will not get Explore as an option here. So if you have a lot of things, you can uncheck them and just check the things you want to transfer. In this case, I'm only doing it once. I press export and the iPhone will give me these options. If I don't see Explore, I press the three dots and I click Explore. And this is now Explore telling me it has imported this information. And so when I go now looking and I press done, Explore shows me that I now have this area track basically available in Explore. And if you back up, you'll see that they tend to pull these under the term collections. And you can press on example area 1 and it's in the list. And then if you click on it in the list, it'll show you what it actually looks like. So it's on my phone. It is in the Explore app. I want to go check devices across the bottom and make sure that it is synced to my GPS. So in this case, it has synced, and I go in my GPS and I do not see that area. And it's a fairly simple reason for that, which is that the GPS imports them, but it is not showing them on the map. So if I go into my list of tracks now, you'll see I have example area 1. I click on that. The second option down is show on map. All I have to do is turn and toggle that on. You can also edit the color and things like that above there, even the name if you want. But if I click show on map and then I go back to my map on my handheld, you'll see that I now have that area available. So it's a really good feature for a dog handler if you want to be able to use your GPS instead of staring at your phone, which is one of my favorite things to do. I'm not terribly fond of having my phone out. So the opposite of what we just did, of course, is taking data from your Garmin into CalTopo. And again, you can do a variety of data. You can do waypoints, you can do tracks, etc. So if you look at tracks, in this case, I'm doing a track from the handheld. I'm going to make sure I've saved it. Also, you want to make sure before you do anything that you clear it. So you're only saving the data at hand. And also, I'm going to save my dog track, which in my case is on this collar. Slightly different method. They have 3 bars for the dog tracks, and you say save track, and you can rename it, but make sure and press that check mark at the bottom, and that will also export the dog track. So if you go back and look, I now have in my list of tracks those 2 that say 6-7. I say the same thing twice, close together. And I also have new dog collar tracks in, dated 6-7. So those are exports from my Garmin, saved on my Garmin handheld. Then I go to the Explore app and I want to make sure that that data is syncing. Explore pretty much will auto sync as long as it's on. If the little wheels are not spinning, you can press them and that will force the sync as well. So now when I look in the Explore app, I have an activity. Activity is always what the handheld has saved. And I'm going to export that activity and choose CalTopo. And CalTopo says, are you sure this is what you want? And I say, yes. I click on the name and I can change the name. So I'm just showing how to do that here. It's important on a search, in my opinion, because everybody will have some sort of date format and everything starts looking the same if you don't change the name. So this is the track exported from the Explore app into CalTopo. And I'm just going in to change the color here so it's a little easier to see. One thing to note when you do this is it exports into the open map in CalTopo. So always make sure you have the map you're interested in open in CalTopo before you bring it over. So that's my activity. I can also go into one of the dog tracks. These are slightly different. They handle the export slightly different. In this case, it's the 3 dots on the right. And again, I pick export and select CalTopo. I change the name and I bring that in to CalTopo. I'm just trying to change the color of one of these since they're both blue. Zoom in a little bit so I have a little better control. Wrong thing. There we go. So there's the dog track. And I'm going to edit that and change the color on it. And now you can see my track versus the dog track. But these are all just from handheld to explore into CalTopo. So it's good data to have for training. It's excellent data to have for actual search management information. So the last thing I'm going to cover, all the Astros, the Alphas, the newer GPSs are Bluetooth. Some of the old ones are not. And if for any reason you're having trouble with Explore, but you need to get your data off of the Alphas, you can still do that what I call the old-fashioned way, which is wiring them in. And you can wire them into something besides a laptop. So in this case, I'm just using my iPad as an example. But the key to being able to do all of that is the set of fittings that you're going to pick, right? Because your fittings, whether it's your Lightning on an iPhone or whatever similar, that's the key. This particular iPad has a USB-C port. It's a little bitty small port here on the side, right there. It will stay in focus. So this little thing is just a USB-C to a USB port, right? And then you can plug in the USB cord that comes with your Garmin, and still comes with your Garmin. It allows you to charge it, but it also allows you to talk to it. So when you plug that in, you can get it all plugged in, right? You'll see my Garmin just turned on. And what it'll do is it'll show you that it's saving a bunch of information. And when it's done with that, it goes to the wired comms setting, or display, that one, the Garmin Trident, as I often call it. And then on my laptop, or on my iPad, that little icon right here on the iPhone and iPads, let me see if I can, there we go, that one, the little folder, right? That's just a file explorer type thing, like on your laptop. It shows you all the files. And you'll notice over here on the left that I now have a Garmin option, right? So if I click on Garmin, right, I now have folders. And if I click on Garmin again, I now have a bunch more folders. And this is where all your data is saved on the Garmins. Okay? Historically, the 320s and the 430s, this was how you always got data off of them. You had to do this file transfer step. The Alphas, of course, because you have Bluetooth, you don't always have to do this. The main difference between the 320s, 430s, and the Alpha is that the person track, the track that the handheld itself is making, is not under the GPX folder, which is where most of this data is usually kept. So the dog tracks, waypoints, those are still under a GPX folder on the Alphas, but the people one is under activities. And when you look at activities, you'll note that all these files are a .fit, which matches with Garmin's fitness things, but doesn't necessarily match with GPX. You cannot import these .fit files into, for instance, CalTopo. The option you have is on the Alphas, you can open these up on the handheld, and one of the options that comes up at bottom right, if you do the 3-bar thing, is to save as track. And when you do save as track on the handheld, it will drop your / the handheld's track back into the GPX folder. So in this case, I don't have that. right? But I have the dog tracks and that kind of thing. And at this point, this is really just a file place. So I can go into CalTopo and say import file. I can select from this location, right? And it'll just bring in my track or the dog's track. Or it'll bring in waypoints. I even have waypoints in here. And you can go backwards. You can, take an area or a polygon from CalTopo, save it down into this GPX folder, right? And then be able to display it on your actual Garmin. So at this step, it's just file manipulation. It's just that you have to have what you need on your personal phone or iPad or whatever, right? It's a matter of getting the correct connectors to get you from one place to another. So again, if you go to Track Manager and I go to any of these saved tracks that happen to be mine as opposed to the dog ones, these are saved for real as a .fit, a .fit file, right? But if I go to the 3 bars down here, I have an option at the bottom there to save as track. And if I do that, it will save the equivalent into a .gpx file and into the .gpx folder. So that's one way to get your data without having too much trouble if you're actually having to do a file manipulation. Hopefully this data has been useful to you. Again, if you have any questions, you can email me. And if you found this data useful, please consider a donation to NASTA.